Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the financial world you trusted no longer exists in the way you knew it. The banks you've kept your savings in are suddenly announcing losses. The investments you thought were safe are worth half of what they were yesterday. Your paycheck no longer stretches as far as it used to, and everything, from a carton of milk to a gallon of gas, feels like it has doubled in price. For millions of people across the world, this isn't a hypothetical situation. It's the reality of financial collapse, and economists like Richard Wolff warn us that a seismic shift, one big enough to define and scar an entire generation, is not just possible, but inevitable. This is not the first time humanity has stood on the edge of an economic storm. History is filled with collapses: the Great Depression of the 1930s, the stagflation crisis of the 1970s, the 2008 global financial meltdown. Each of these moments didn't just shake numbers on a screen, they reshaped societies, destroyed livelihoods, and rewrote the hopes of an entire generation. And the truth is, every generation seems to face its defining crisis. The question is not whether another collapse will happen, but when, how severe it will be, and how prepared we are to face it. So why do collapses like this keep happening? At the heart of it is something very human: the constant push for more. Businesses chase higher profits, governments take on larger debts, and individuals spend beyond their means. When the pressure builds too much, when debt grows larger than income, when speculation outpaces reality, when greed outweighs caution, the system eventually breaks. Think of it like a bridge designed to carry 1,000 people. As long as the load stays within limits, the bridge stands strong. But add just a few too many people, push the weight just a little too far, and suddenly the structure collapses. The economy works in the same way, except the bridge isn't made of steel and concrete. It's made of trust, confidence, and money, things that can evaporate overnight. Richard Wolff often points out that the global economy is built on contradictions. On one side, we have unprecedented wealth, billionaires multiplying, corporations posting record profits, stock markets breaking new highs. On the other side, ordinary workers live paycheck to paycheck. Households are crushed by debt, and young people look at housing markets that are completely out of reach. When you combine massive wealth inequality with fragile financial systems and global uncertainty, you get a time bomb ticking louder every day. Let's break this down in the simplest way possible. Imagine money as water flowing through a community. When it flows evenly, everyone gets to drink, crops grow, businesses thrive, and people stay healthy. But when most of the water is hoarded in one place, say a massive reservoir guarded by a few, the rest of the community begins to dry up. People get desperate. Tensions rise. Some may even try to break down the dam to get what they need. That's what economic collapse looks like. It's not just about charts or Wall Street numbers. It's about the lived reality of ordinary people trying to survive when the flow of money dries up. But here's where it gets even more dangerous. When a collapse begins, it creates a domino effect. Banks stop lending because they're scared people won't repay. Businesses stop hiring because they're scared of losing customers. People stop spending because they're scared of losing their jobs. The fear itself accelerates the collapse. It's the same psychology we saw during the Great Depression when people rushed to withdraw money from banks, ironically causing the very failures they were trying to avoid. Fear is contagious, and in an interconnected world, it spreads faster than ever before. Now think about this for a moment. What makes this generation different from those that came before? Why does Wolff suggest that the coming collapse could reshape this era more profoundly than previous ones? The answer lies in three major forces: globalization, technology, and debt. Globalization means that crises are no longer contained within borders. A housing collapse in the United States can ripple into Europe, Asia, and Africa within days. A war in one corner of the world can spike food prices everywhere. Technology, while bringing innovation and wealth, has also concentrated power in a few giant corporations, replacing millions of jobs with automation and artificial intelligence, and leaving workers scrambling to catch up. And debt, personal, corporate, and governmental, has reached historic highs. The world today is more indebted than at any other time in human history. That means when the collapse comes, the fall will be harder, faster, and more unforgiving than before. But here's the paradox. Collapse is not only destruction, it's also rebirth. Every time an economy breaks down, it creates space for something new to rise. The Great Depression gave rise to stronger social safety nets and labor rights. The crisis of the 1970s reshaped industries and energy policies. The crash of 2008 birthed new technologies, new companies, and new awareness about financial systems. The collapse that is coming for this generation will be no different. Yes, it will be painful. Yes, it will test people in ways they've never been tested before. But it will also force us to rethink what matters, to rebuild in ways that are fairer, stronger, and more resilient. So what does this mean for you, watching this video right now? First, it means recognizing that collapse is not just something that happens out there to governments and corporations. It's something that hits households directly. It shows up as job loss, rising costs, evaporating savings, and shattered dreams. That's why financial literacy is not a luxury anymore. It's survival. Understanding how money works, how investments function, and how debt can either help or destroy you is the first step toward protecting yourself and your family. Let's simplify some key concepts. Take inflation, for example. It's not just an abstract percentage announced on the news. Inflation is the shrinking power of your money. If you hold a $100 bill today and inflation is at 10%, in a year that bill effectively buys only $90 worth of goods. That's the silent theft happening in the background every day. Now, think about interest rates. When rates are low, borrowing money is cheap, which fuels growth but also encourages risky debt. When rates rise, borrowing gets expensive, slowing the economy but also crushing anyone who borrowed too much. These forces are like tides, and whether you're a beginner or an advanced investor, you have to learn how to swim with them, not against them. Then there's investing. Some people think investing is only for the rich, but in reality, it's the only way for ordinary people to fight back against inflation and build future security. The key is not chasing quick gains, which is what often leads to devastating losses when bubbles burst, but thinking long-term, diversifying, and focusing on assets that hold real value. Stocks, bonds, real estate, even new sectors like renewable energy or technology. Each has its risks and rewards. The mistake most people make during a collapse is panicking, selling everything, and locking in losses. The wiser move is to prepare in advance, hold strong during storms, and position yourself to take advantage of the opportunities that always emerge from chaos. Because here's the truth. Every collapse creates winners and losers. The losers are those who are unprepared, over-leveraged, or frozen by fear. The winners are those who saw the signs, stayed calm, and adapted quickly. Think back to 2008. While millions lost their homes, others bought undervalued properties that later tripled in value. While banks were failing, some individuals invested in new industries that went on to dominate the next decade. A collapse is not the end. It's the beginning of a new cycle. The question is, will you be one of the ones who adapts? And beyond money, there's something deeper to think about. Collapses don't just challenge bank accounts, they challenge identities, communities, and values. They force people to confront what truly matters. For this generation, that means rethinking work, rethinking consumption, and rethinking success. Do we measure our worth only by the size of our paycheck or the car in our driveway? Or do we start to realize that resilience, adaptability, and community are more valuable than material possessions? Richard Wolff has long argued that the economic system itself, capitalism in its current form, is riddled with contradictions that make collapse inevitable. But he also suggests that collapse opens a door for transformation, and that's the hope buried inside the fear. If this generation is going to be marked by a collapse, it can also be marked by a rebirth. one that values fairness over greed, sustainability over exploitation, and collective resilience over fragile individualism. So where does that leave you today? It leaves you with a choice. You can ignore the warnings, hope that things will stay the same, and be caught off guard when the collapse arrives. Or you can start preparing now, not by living in fear, but by living with awareness. Build your financial literacy. Save more than you spend. Invest in skills that will be valuable no matter what the economy looks like. Strengthen your relationships and your community, because in times of collapse, those bonds are worth more than gold. Or, the collapse that will change a generation is coming. But whether it defines you as a victim or empowers you as a survivor depends on what you do today. History is written not just by the events that happen, but by how people respond to them. And this moment, this warning, is your chance to decide how you will respond. Will you freeze or will you prepare? Will you crumble or will you rise? The storm is coming. But every storm, no matter how violent, eventually clears. And when it does, the people who held steady, who planted seeds in the middle of the chaos, will be the ones who shape the new world that emerges. That's the opportunity of a generation, and it's in your hands right now.